Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. I'm your host, the Fellow KGB. You can follow me on Twitter at the Fellow KGB, and it is Tuesday evening, 6 o'clock Central Time. We're going to be going over my Waiver Wire Week 10 report here. We're going to start off with just listing some injuries that we're going to be watching. Today was a really slow news day. Nothing really, we didn't really get much injury report at all. So it's going to be kind of a in the dark waiver wire period here, but we're monitoring Christian McCaffrey. He did have the AC shoulder kind of injury at the end of the fourth quarter there. I'm assuming he's doubtful for week 10. We'll see what they do here, but that's going to make Mike Davis of interest to us here. A couple other injuries here. Preston Williams, he's got a right foot sprain. He's probably not playing this weekend. Ben Roethlisberger, he did leave the game, but he returned with that left MCL sprain. He should be okay, but he's also on the COVID list. Apparently Vance McDonald is on the COVID list, and he was sitting next to him on the plane. So high close contact. We'll see if Ben Roethlisberger plays this weekend. Miles Sanders, left knee. He's been out the last few weeks. He's probable for week 10, so that's good news for Sanders owners. Kenyon Drake, left ankle. He's going to probably be doubtful again this weekend, so another good boost for Chase Edmonds. Laviska Shenault, he had the hamstring. I think he only played like 10 or 11 snaps last weekend, so we'll see about him. He's going to be questionable. Chris Carson, maybe coming back from the foot sprain. He's going to be questionable as well. David Montgomery, this is really one to keep an eye on here. He had a concussion. I think it was in the third or fourth quarter. He's going to be questionable for week 10. We're going to want to monitor his practice reports. They do play on Monday Night Football, so he gets the extra day to probably get in there. So if he does play, you're going to use him as normal. But if not, we're going to be looking elsewhere at maybe guys like Ryan Nall. Joe Mixon with the right foot, he's still questionable for week 10, so we're probably holding on to Giovanni Bernard. And then Jack Doyle, just because they play on Thursday night, he's going through concussion protocols. I'm assuming he's not going to be playing, so we'll probably be looking at the Colts tight ends at some point here. And then we got some guys eligible to return from IR this weekend. So I think the Browns have already activated Nick Chubb. Austin Eckler is eligible this weekend. I don't think we're going to see him for a few weeks yet. Then you got guys that are probably going to get activated in Raheem Mostert, Allen Lazard, Sony Michel, and then maybe Paris Campbell. So with all that out of the way here, we're going to hop into a screen share, and then we're going to go over quarterbacks here. So let's get this pulled up here, fantasyfellowship.com. Just adjusting my boxes real quick here. So the way I do my quarterbacks, if you're new to the show, we're going to be looking at the quarterback one streaming options ranked. And the way I look at this is basically I go over to ESPN.com and I just kind of look at the percent rostered, and then I'm going to list who I think is going to be maybe like open in your league, and then we're going to rank them as it goes. So the top end guys are up here. The guys that you probably don't want to go with here but should be available are down here. So, but what I mean here is, so I'm just looking at the ESPN projections here, and then they do have the percent rostered here. So if I go down the list, some of the first guys that might be available here is Ben Roethlisberger. He's only about 84% owned. Again, he's on the COVID list now. He's got the MCL thing. Maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't play, but we'll monitor his status throughout the week. You got Carson Wentz here, who's just below 70% owned. He's got a really good matchup going up against the Giants this weekend. He's on my streaming list. But if you need a quarterback, I think the one guy that I'm going to recommend probably the most and the most confidently is going to be Jared Goff going up against Seattle here. He's about 41% owned, and he's going up against the worst secondary, worst defense for quarterbacks. So Jared Goff is probably, I think I had him. Yeah, I got Jared Goff and Carson Wentz as my top two streaming options. And again, Carson Wentz about 70% owned, and then you got Jared Goff about 40% owned. So probably Goff's available in your league if you need, to replace a guy who's on the buys this week. So Matt Ryan's on bye. Dallas, we don't care. Mahomes is on bye. So if you have Mahomes and Matt Ryan, you're probably looking for guys like Jared Goff, Carson Wentz. I also like Derek Carr this weekend against Denver. I'm sure Justin Herbert's owned, so that's kind of why I do the likely owned here. But maybe Joe Burrow against Pittsburgh. We'll kind of see how it goes. But if you have quarterback questions, you can ask those in the chat room, and we can look at those later. Looks like we do have a question here from our guy Six. So we're hearing rumors of bringing Lamar Miller up from the practice squad for Chicago. Yes, we have to see about David Montgomery with his practice reports. I'm not sure when he had the concussion. It was maybe third or fourth quarter. But the good news for Montgomery owners is that they do play Monday night, so they get the extra day to prepare. So I think if Montgomery gets any kind of limited practice in by Thursday or Friday, he's probably going to play. But again, I think tomorrow, I don't know if the Bears practice Wednesday. because they do play Monday. So I think Thursday is going to be the first day we get practice reports. So I'll be watching to see if they upgrade Lamar Miller. The one guy that would be, if Montgomery's out, I think Ryan Nall, he's going to be the guy that gets probably the most snaps behind him. So it's going to be kind of a weird situation where I just want to pull up the snap counts from last week's game. But I'm kind of looking at this backup running back, Ryan Nall here. He's kind of like a Peyton Hillis, vibe to him. But Montgomery played 59 snaps last weekend. Ryan Nall came in and got 2 snaps. And then he did get 1 target, 1 reception here. I think he scored a touchdown too. But Ryan Nall is someone I'm keeping my eye on. But Lamar Miller, he's just he's not exciting. It is against the Vikings, so I like the matchup. But I think we might have other options on the waiver wire that I would prefer over a Bears running back. So to the quarterbacks here, this is just a super flex league list here. These guys might be available. They're probably the bottom of the barrel, 26 to 32nd ranked quarterbacks. We're talking Nick Mullins against New Orleans, Alex Smith going up against Detroit. Jake Luton's probably going to get a couple more starts here. I don't know if Gardner Minshew is going to be hanging around much, for the next week or two, and maybe Luton just kind of takes over the job from then on. So it's probably a fluid situation in Jacksonville. Case Keenum I have on the list here versus Houston, just because Baker, he's potentially not going to play in this one. I think he was on the COVID list last weekend. So if he practices this weekend, that's a good sign for him. Andy Dalton might have been dropped. Sam Darnold maybe returning week 10. But then just some guys to monitor down here. If anyone dropped Gardner Minshew, he's worth holding on to. And then maybe Dwayne Haskins, because we did lose Kyle Allen for the season. Alex Smith is going to be the starter, and injury concerns, or if they are just not getting what they want out of the quarterback position, maybe they turn to Dwayne Haskins. So those are some quarterback options for you. The running back room, this is probably the most important room of the show. So I kind of do my list as these are running backs who are likely owned but could be available in your league. So I'm pretty much higher on these guys than the ones down here. And that's going to be Mike Davis. Just because I know in a few leagues that I played in, I didn't have Mike Davis, but he was dropped in just a couple leagues. So he's going to be a guy where McCaffrey, he just recovered from this high ankle sprain, and now we got an AC joint sprain in his shoulder. He's probably not going to play this weekend. If he does, I would assume it's not going to be a full snap count. I think we did see Davis get 30%, McCaffrey 70%. So even if McCaffrey does play, I think Mike Davis is going to be a flex. I think he put like 8.9 points up on the board in PPR leagues. So I'm kind of interested in Mike Davis no matter what here. So if anyone was kind of quick to the drop there on Mike Davis, he's going to be the priority. And I know McCaffrey looms, in the future, he's going to probably getting back to that 80, 90% snap load. But he's already kind of injured right now. So who knows what happens with him going forward. I just think Mike Davis, we know what we're getting with him, and he deserves to be on your roster. So I love Mike Davis this week. Raheem Mostert, just be careful. If anyone dropped him, it's worth looking up. He should be activated this weekend. They also have a bye next weekend, so it wouldn't surprise me if he's not playing this week, but he should be back in a week or two for sure. Darrell Henderson might have been dropped over the bye week. He plays against Seattle. Jerick McKinnon just keeps scoring touchdowns. He's going to go up against New Orleans, which is a tough test, but he's proving valuable enough in PPR leagues, and it seems like they don't really want to trust JaMychal Hasty. So I think when Mostert does come back, it's going to be back to Mostert and McKinnon. So we'll see what happens there. We got J.K. Dobbins going up against the New England Patriots. This one we're going to have to really monitor Mark Ingram's status. He's got the high ankle sprain. And I think they've already had their bye week, so who knows what's going on with Mark Ingram. We're going to watch his reports this week. But I do like what I'm seeing out of our guy, J.K. Dobbins. He's starting to lead the team in snap counts. This is week 8 here. Let me get to week 9. So last weekend with just J.K. Dobbins and our guy Gus Edwards, you see J.K. Dobbins get 36 snaps to Gus Edwards 24. And then again, more touches for Dobbins, 12 attempts, 30 yards, not really good output. But the Patriots defense is all of a sudden one that we can start attacking with their ground game. I think the Jets played a pretty good game against them last night. They didn't win, but the Jets were able to move the ball. So I think Baltimore is going to have a pretty good time moving the ball as well. So I like J.K. Dobbins. Just make sure he's not dropped in any leagues there. Latavius Murray, I have Latavius on here because, the Saints just dominated Tampa Bay. And I thought the offense just looked really smooth. They're a really good team. And we're getting to that point. When it's week 10, it's kind of getting to handcuff season where you're going to want to make sure you have all of your pieces covered. If you have the extra room on the bench, I think Latavius Murray, he's a guy that already gets about 7 to 10 touches per game. And if anything happens to Alvin Kamara, or if they start to rest him, and kind of get Latavius Murray more touches down the stretch. That wouldn't surprise me. Same thing with Jamal Williams. We've seen what Jamal can do when Aaron Jones is out. And Aaron Jones, he did play last weekend, but there's always a chance for re-injury. So Jamal Williams, when he gets the #1 workload, he's going to be an RB1 for us. So make sure he's not been dropped the last week or so. And I think they reactivated from the COVID list, so that's good news for Jamal. He's probably playing against Jacksonville, and he might even be flex-worthy just because it's Green Bay and Jacksonville. So this one could get out of hand. We could see them continue to limit Aaron Jones's workload as he gets healthier. Philip Lindsay going up against Las Vegas. I still think Lindsay looks better than Melvin Gordon, so I'd continue to hold on to him there. Giovanni Bernard is a guy that I'm still worth holding on to here because we don't know about Joe Mixon. He's got the right foot injury. The team's not really going anywhere. They gave him a lot of money. Maybe they just continue to ride out Giovanni Bernard for another week or two. But even if Mixon comes back, like I said, I'm a big believer in like the injury seal on a player like Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, even Raheem Mostert, and Christian McCaffrey for that matter too. Once these guys are injured, they're not playing at 100%, so they tend to get re-injured almost easier than they would normally. So I like stashing onto Bernard, Tony Pollard, and then hold on to Myles Gaskin down here. He's going to be probably out for another 2 weeks, but it's clear that he's going to be their lead back when he comes back. And then I got Justin Jackson here. I apologize for any Justin Jackson recommendations last week. He got hurt pregame. They didn't really give us any information on this, and he took one snap, and then they took him out with the knee injury. So he's going up against Miami. I don't know if he's going to play, so we're going to have to watch some of the backups and take a look at those guys down here. But on the priority adds to the running back room that should be available, Duke Johnson's on the list going up against Cleveland. David Johnson left really early with a concussion last week, so we're going to have to monitor his reports. But even if David Johnson plays, I'm thinking Duke Johnson plays a little bit more, so he's going to enter low-end RB2 flex territory for me. We saw J.D. McKissic catch a lot of passes. I think it was like 14 targets, maybe 9 catches last weekend. And when you think about Alex Smith, this is going to be Alex Smith's team going forward, and he's always been kind of a dink and dunk quarterback. And he gave J.D. McKissic 14 targets, 9 catches, 65 yards, little on the ground. But if you can get 9 catches from your running back too in a PPR league, you're really happy. So he comes away with over 16 PPR points last weekend, a huge amount of the snap share. He was on the field for 83% of the plays last week. So really good sign for McKissic there. And then I got Zach Moss going on against Arizona here. That's going to be at Arizona. And if we look quick at what Zach Moss is doing in the Buffalo backfield, the one part is I love Zach Moss because he's in a really good offense. He's starting to out-snap Devin Singletary as well. He out-touched him for the first time last week here. He had 9 carries to Devin Singletary's 2. 2 targets for Moss, 3 for Singletary. But, I mean, more touches for Moss. He's going to get the red zone touches, and this is a good offense, one that we want to get invested in. So as the season gets colder and Buffalo, maybe they're not passing as efficiently as they were, especially last week, we might see Zach Moss start to rack up, 12, 15 touches down the wire here in December. So I love adding Zach Moss. Wayne Gallman, he's just been scoring touchdowns. I know it's not a very sexy pick, but going up against Philadelphia, I mean, at this point, he gets the touches and he gets the red zone opportunity. So Wayne Gallman could be an RB2 fill-in if you're looking to replace a Todd Gurley or a Clyde Edwards this weekend. I did talk about Ryan Nall at the top of the show here going up against Minnesota. This is the guy I'm probably not trying to add tonight, but maybe throughout the week, if we see Montgomery still hasn't been cleared from concussion protocol, Ryan Nall, Lamar Miller. I should probably add Lamar Miller's name to this. Thanks for that comment there, 6. But Ryan Nall, Lamar Miller, one of these backups would be the next man up if Montgomery can't go Monday night. I got DeAndre Washington here on the list going up against the Chargers. He could be the lead back for Miami. We were not really impressed with the opportunities for the Dolphins last weekend. They kind of had to air it out, which was good because we got to watch Tua kind of throw it around. But the running backs without Myles Gaskin, I mean, Salvon Ahmed, 28 snaps, 7 carries, 38 yards. Malcolm Perry, 23 snaps, 1 target, no catches. And then Jordan Howard here with the super crazy 10 for 19 yards and a touchdown. And then Patrick Laird just getting the 1 target, 1 carry here, nothing really crazy. So I liked DeAndre Washington in Oakland last year. He did some good things for Kansas City a couple times this year, and now he could be their lead back right away as early as this week. So he also does get the extra week next week with Myles Gaskin probably out. So this is a guy here that I don't think a lot of people are going to be high on. You could probably snag him for free tomorrow morning. That's one of my favorite moves to do, actually. And some of my, I mean, most of my leagues are all free agent waiver wire bucks. And I like to save the money, especially as we get towards the playoff push here. So the more money you have, the more you can kind of go in on those guys when things make sense, week 14, 15, and 16. But DeAndre Washington might be a guy that I add for free in a couple leagues tomorrow just to see what happens with this Dolphins backfield. We got another Baltimore back here, Gus Edwards. He did fumble last weekend, but he also got the goal line touchdown. And it was interesting because he actually fumbled his on the goal line. He fumbled once, and then the next drive or two, they came back down and gave it right back to him. So there's confidence in Gus Edwards. I don't know if Mark Ingram's going to play, but if he's out, especially against New England, teams have been able to run on the Patriots lately, which doesn't make sense. But this is the 2020 New England Patriots defense we're looking at here. So Gus Edwards becomes a potential Sunday night RB2 flex, especially in touchdown leagues. If you have Josh Jacobs, again, it's kind of getting to handcuff season. So Devontae Booker actually looked really good last week. I don't know if I got the stats in for Las Vegas yet. I don't think I did. But we did see, I guess I'm going to pull those up here. Let's go to Pro Football Focus. Devontae Booker looked impressive last weekend, and he's actually looked probably better than any time he did with the Denver Broncos. So Raiders took on the Chargers. We did see, let's look at the snap counts first for the running backs. I think they're trying to kind of ease up on Josh Jacobs. He only had 56% of the snaps last week. Devontae Booker did get 13 snaps for 26%. But when Devontae Booker's in the game, they end up giving him a pretty good amount of touches here. So he did, have 8 carries, 68 yards, and a touchdown. No targets, but, I mean, he was in for 13 snaps, and he got the ball 8 times. So he's looking like a pretty good handcuff if you're a Josh Jacobs owner. I mean, Josh Jacobs has been injury, he's been dinged up a little bit this year. He did get towards the end of last year as well. So I think Devontae Booker, I own Josh Jacobs in a couple leagues. This is probably the week where I'm just going to start stashing some of these handcuffs, and especially a guy like Devontae Booker. You got Joshua Kelly, Kalen Ballage, Tremaine Pope. These are going to be the 3 running backs. If Justin Jackson can't practice or go this weekend, these are going to be the 3 guys that get the first run here. Kalen Ballage actually looked really good. I think he did get the touchdown. Josh Kelly is probably not going to be a guy that I'm super high on. So if Justin Jackson can't go, it's probably going to be Kalen Ballage or Tremaine Pope. So this is going to be a fluid situation here. So these guys are all kind of just maybe you add tomorrow for free after the waiver wire run. But definitely check out your list for some of these guys to see if they're available. Otherwise, Zach Moss, J.D. McKissick in the PPR league, maybe DeAndre Washington. So we got, we got some receivers to look at here. The list of receivers is really long. So I just did this with basically these guys are likely owned. They might be available in your league. And then I kind of just ranked them being at the top here. These are the guys that I would want the most and probably start this weekend. And then I got some guys down here that are on bye, some guys returning from injury, things like that. But yeah, T. Higgins, Jerry Jeudy, rookie receivers are really, really fun right now. Jerry Jeudy had his first 100-yard game, big touchdown. T. Higgins is playing great football. Pittsburgh can be beaten with I guess their defense does allow wide receiver points. So I'm not too worried about Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins. Maybe Auden Tate should be on this list. But yeah, Christian Kirk, Curtis Samuel, Sterling Shepard. These are guys that are basically showing us they belong in our lineup every week right now. They're consistent PPR plays. Mike Williams is starting to show up. Brandon Ayuk returns from the COVID list. Emmanuel Sanders looked pretty good against Tampa Bay. We'll see about AJ Green, Darius Slayton, Corey Davis. These guys are more kind of boom bust players, but I do think they deserve a spot on your roster if they're available. Cole Beasley, John Brown. We talked about Buffalo, how you want to keep getting pieces of that offense. And Tim Patrick, man, every time I see Tim Patrick, I come away more impressed. He's doing a really good, poor man's impression of Cortland Sutton. And then I've been talking about Alan Lazard the last few weeks. It sounds like he was really close to playing last week against San Francisco. So I would assume during Jacksonville this weekend, he's going to play. And then Jalen Reagor, he's going to be 100% now. He did play the week before the bye, but I think it's going to be guns a-blazing for the rookie receiver there. And then priority receivers that we should be able to have in most leagues, and it's Jacoby Myers. He looked so good last weekend, last night. Let me just pull up his numbers. He just had a massive amount of targets. I'm trying to see how many projection points he has here. It's a tough matchup going up against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football. But, I mean, if you can get a wide receiver like Jacoby Myers right now, who's probably going to be the leading target guy for Cam Newton the rest of the way. I mean, he's seen 30 targets in the last 3 games. over double-digit PPR points, so you love the consistency that we're seeing here. But again, 14 targets last night, 12 catches, 169 yards. And the week before, I think this is going to probably be a bad game for Jacoby going forward. I guess both these could be seen week 7 and week 8, where he gets about 60 yards and 4 to 6 catches. I think he's going to probably be having a nice 10-point floor going forward. And the schedule is shaping up to be pretty decent. I know he plays Baltimore this weekend, but then he gets Houston. We'll see about Arizona, but then I'm not really concerned about the Chargers. Maybe against the Rams, he gets matched up against Jalen Ramsey. But championship weekends against Miami week 15, Buffalo week 16. So there's some potential there for Jacoby Myers. He's probably the #1 waiver wire ad. And I think he could be wide receiver 3 flex right away this weekend against Baltimore. So we'll see if he can take advantage, I guess, of a tough matchup. You got KJ Hamler here going up against the Raiders. I just want to see what our guy did last weekend. I think he had like 15 PPR points. So KJ Hamler, 75% of the snaps. He had 1 rushing attempt for 15 yards. So hopefully they give him 1 or 2 of those a game going forward. But then 10 targets, 6 catches, 75 yards. And he scored, I think, in week 8. So he's stacking 2 really good games here back to back. Rookie receivers are both playing really well. So I think KJ Hamler can be a part of your wide receiver 3 in PPR. We got a couple Bears receivers here, Anthony Miller and Darnell Mooney. I just want to see what both these guys did last weekend. We're not super excited about the Bears offense, but they do play against the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football, who have been allowing a lot of wide receiver points, a lot of touchdowns, receptions, yards to the receiver position. And then we see Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Anthony Miller. These guys are on the field a lot, so they run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. And last weekend, I mean, Darnell Mooney led the team in targets with 11. And then you see Allen Robinson with 9 targets, Anthony Miller 8 targets. Nick Foles is just going to keep feeding these guys. So all 3 of these guys are potentially useful. Anthony Miller, 5 for 59 last weekend. He did have a fumble, so he was below double digits. But then you got Darnell Mooney, who at this point, I mean, he's been one of the hot players for the Bears all season, and he's been consistently, second in snaps in the receivers. He went 5 for 43 last weekend, and that's kind of like I think a low-end floor for him because we did see some big plays from him throughout the season where all it takes is really 1 play for him to make your day. He gets open deep, and I think Nick Foles just needs to keep throwing it his way. So I like all Bears receivers against the easy matchup against the Vikings. We got David Moore going up against the Rams. You think about the Rams, really good pass defense with Jalen Ramsey and some of their safeties. But they're going to be focused, on DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And all of a sudden, David Moore, I think he's caught maybe 2 touchdowns in a row. Let's just take a look here. And, I mean, again, it's kind of handcuff season. I know I don't really I don't really advise like wide receiver handcuffs, but just because Seattle's offense is so good, you see David Moore here all of a sudden stacking, basically some really nice games here, an 8.8, a 13.6, and a 17.1. It's going to be low volume, but last week in a game where they had to keep throwing the ball, he saw 6 targets, 4 catches, 71 yards, and a touchdown. The weeks before, he's seeing a steady 3 to 4 targets here, about 3 catches, and he's always going to have an opportunity for a touchdown. So if you're in a desperate pinch, I think David Moore could be a guy that Tyler Lockett has been injured. He's been injury prone before. If he misses a game or 2 down the stretch, maybe week 13, 14, and you got David Moore chilling there, I think we're all probably going to be recommending to start David Moore. So you see just in his game logs, he's had only 2 bad games here. Going up against Dallas, a 1.2, against Minnesota here, a 0. But all the other games, like if you get a 7 or an 8, from David Moore, I think that's okay, especially if he gets the touchdown here. So he's starting to be a guy that, I don't know, maybe we just kind of fall into the offense and start to trust Russell Wilson a little bit more here. Richie James, not super excited to get Richie James on my team, but it's hard to ignore a guy that just blew up and had a day that could compete with Devontae Adams' numbers last weekend. So Richie James, he's going to be competing with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk for targets, so he's probably going to fall down the pecking order a little bit. But this could be a guy to just monitor for 1 more week. We'll see if they want to keep him involved in the offense. You got Gabriel Davis against Arizona here. He's been a really pretty impressive 4th-round pick for a rookie receiver. He's consistently getting about 50% of the snaps. He did drop a touchdown the week before too, so he could have had 2 touchdowns in a row. But 4 for 70, 1 touchdown. To me, he kind of reminds me of like a poor man's version of Mike Evans. He's just a big receiver who kind of gets open deep and can make those 50-50 plays in the red zone. And we've seen John Brown kind of in and out of the lineup. So if anything happens to John Brown, we're going to see more Gabe Davis down the stretch here. And again, it's just one of those things where you see a good offense like Buffalo, like Seattle. You kind of just want to start collecting pieces of it because this season's a war of attrition. As it gets colder, as injuries start to pile up, little nicks and bruises, maybe guys like Gabriel Davis, maybe even guys like Auden Tate, Danny Amendola. These are all guys that are kind of, pushing up the depth chart as injuries and opportunities come forth. So Danny Amendola is just on the list against Washington because Kenny Golladay, we don't know what's going on with the hip injury. I think he might be trending towards playing this weekend, but we'll have to see the practice reports tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. But again, if Danny Amendola is going to be one of the leading targets without Kenny Golladay in there, I think Amendola has wide receiver 3 flex value in PPR leagues. And then this is the guy, Auden Tate here, going up against Pittsburgh. I just want to pull up something I noticed last weekend in my opportunity report back in week 8, because Cincinnati was on a bye week 9, but something about Auden Tate stuck out, and he was kind of their preseason MVP, or their training camp MVP, if you will. But looking at the snap counts from the Bengals, back in week 8 against the Titans, you see A.J. Green, 85% of the snaps, T. Higgins, 78, Tyler Boyd, 75. But Auden Tate kind of came in here and had his best game of the season with a pretty decent 45% snap rate and 7 targets, 7 catches, 65 yards. So this is a guy here, caught all 7 of his targets, 65 yards. A.J. Green's just not getting it done, guys. And as the season gets on and on, I think they're going to want to, start to see what this offense can look like in the future with a lineup like T. Higgins on the outside, Auden Tate outside, and Tyler Boyd on the inside. So this is something I'm really keeping an eye on. I think Auden Tate could be a guy that has value for us, especially come fantasy playoff time. And then let's just finish up with the tight ends. Actually, I do have defenses down here too. So we'll be quick with the tight ends. I do have a list here of guys that I think need to be owned in pretty much all leagues. But to be honest, there's only a few elite tight ends in the league right now. Travis Kelce, of course. But then you got Darren Waller, TJ Hawkinson. And I think that the list is pretty short. Those are the only 3 must starts. Maybe Noah Fant. I don't know. But Mark Andrews is getting frustrating. We kind of have to just keep rolling with him and hope we get one of those 1 or 2 touchdown games. Hunter Henry's been pretty consistent. I have high hopes for Dallas Goedert. Hayden Hurst is looking pretty nice, but he's on bye this week. We did see Jonnu Smith kind of come back to life, but again, it's a really low volume there. He only had 2 targets. He caught both targets for a touchdown, but he's kind of boom bust here. Jared Cook is looking decent. Evan Ingram finally caught a touchdown last weekend. Rob Gronkowski and then Eric Ebron are coming on. So if any of these guys somehow are available in your league, I think these would be the tight ends that I'm looking for first. But then I guess on the list here, I do have Dallas Goedert, Eric Ebron. These guys should be owned. If not, those are the priorities, I think. Jimmy Graham, I think if we look here, I'm just curious because, the man couldn't do anything in Green Bay. And then he comes to Chicago, and all of a sudden he's back to top 5 tight end. So I have Jimmy Graham here. He's tight end 6 right now. He's caught 5 touchdowns, over 300 yards, 35 catches here. He's averaging about 10.6 PPR points per game. So Jimmy Graham going up against Minnesota. We've already talked about the kind of porous defense of the Vikings. So I kind of like all Bears weapons in this one. And then you got Tyler Higbee going up against Seattle. Seattle is an awful team covering all receiving options here. So Tyler Higbee could have himself a nice game. Mike Gesicki going up against the Chargers. I don't think the Chargers are very good against the tight end. Let's just double check that. But we do have a potential opening for targets with Preston Williams probably not playing next weekend. So maybe that's just more Devontae Parker and more Mike Gesicki. Just kind of keep it simple and just throw it to your best players. But the Chargers here, the Chargers are the 10th worst against tight end, allowing about 14.5 points per game. So that's going to make me interested in Mike Gesicki. Austin Hooper probably returns this weekend from his, I think it was an appendectomy or something surgery. I don't know. Something had to get removed, but he should be good to go now. Irv Smith caught 2 touchdowns last weekend going up against Chicago. That's kind of a low-volume offense, so that's an ultimate boom-bust play. But before the Packer game and the bye week, Irv Smith was starting to come on, so we like that. Ross Dwelley, I need to spell that correctly. But Ross Dwelley going up against the Saints. He's kind of just a really steady PPR guy where he's probably going to get you, 5 to 10 points at least. And the Saints are pretty, open against the tight end here, about 14.7 points to the tight end position. Jacob Hollister, this one really caught my eye. Seattle Seahawks tight end situation. Let's just go look at that from last weekend. Jacob Hollister actually led the Seahawks in tight end snaps. I think that was the first time this year that someone not named Greg Olsen did it. So you see the tight ends here, Jacob Hollister, 31 snaps, Olsen, 26, Will Dissly, 21. And Hollister came away with 7 targets, 5 catches, 60 yards. So this is a situation that I'm going to be monitoring. I'm not recommending Jacob Hollister like this weekend to start, but if he kind of gets more snaps and he gets more targets again, maybe we're looking at something here that's a trend. And then I think at the top of the show, I talked about Jack Doyle. He's going through concussion protocol this weekend. It's a short week with the game on Thursday night. So that's going to make Trey Burton and Mo Alley-Cox going up against Tennessee really interesting. I'm trying to see here. I think the Titans are the Titans are the 12th worst against tight ends, allowing almost 14 points to the position. And then let's just quick take a look at what the Colts did last week. So Mo Alley-Cox, he led the team in tight end snaps with 35, Trey Burton 29, and Jack Doyle with 22. So you got to think that these are kind of benchmarks for these guys. And then if you add some of these Doyle snaps here, you're going to probably have both guys. Like Mo Alley-Cox is probably flirting with 40 snaps. Trey Burton probably 35 to 40 himself. But both guys, I mean, Philip Rivers is really, really confident in throwing to the tight ends. He has been his entire career. So I think both tight ends are good for 5 or 6 targets on Thursday night. And of course, Mo Alley-Cox, really big play threat here. Trey Burton's kind of the old reliable, almost like a Jimmy Graham, where he's just, you know, where he's going to be. He's not going to get big plays, but he does score touchdowns too. So I think if you need a tight end pinch this week, one of the Colts tight ends could be your guy. And then again, I do have a note here just on George Kittle, just because I'm reading so many conflicting reports on George Kittle's foot injury. They're saying it could be a 6 to 8 week timetable injury. And if the 49ers, I mean, as it stands right now, San Francisco is like the first team out of the playoffs in the NFC. So if they can kind of just keep hanging around and potentially, you know, they get to a point where George Kittle can play, we're probably going to see our guy George Kittle back at some point this year, maybe before, you know, week 15, 16 for fantasy playoffs. So he's a guy that I'm stashing in some of my leagues. But you do see here the Bears are the 7th seed as of now. 49ers are just a game behind here. So something to keep an eye on. I have added George Kittle in a couple of leagues to my IR spot. And then let's just finish up with defenses here. These are just like my top 10 recommendations for defense streamers. I'm sure Baltimore Ravens and Steelers are owned, but maybe the Washington football team going up against Detroit. I have to monitor that Matt Stafford injury. So especially if Matt Stafford can't play, Washington football team is going to be a pretty nice stream this week. Same with Kenny Golladay too. So we're watching both offensive weapons for the Lions. Miami Dolphins have been hot lately. They're going up against Justin Herbert. He's been prone for a couple interceptions or a fumble or something like that. So I think the Dolphins could be a sneaky play here. New Orleans Saints going up against Nick Mullins. That game's in New Orleans too. I don't know if they're starting to allow more fans in there, but definitely intrigued with New Orleans, and now they probably have some more attitude and confidence right now. You got the Chicago Bears going up against the Vikings. This one's risky just because Dalvin Cook has been just so hot lately, but the Bears still have a good defense. They tend to keep games low scoring, and Kirk Cousins is always known to make a stupid play or two. You got Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against Carolina, especially if Christian McCaffrey's out. I think Tampa Bay looks to rebound here. You got the Green Bay Packers going up against Jake Luton and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Philadelphia Eagles going up against Daniel Jones. They can take advantage of some fumbles and some turnovers there. New England Patriots going up against Baltimore. After watching the Jets game last night, I might have to take that one down. But Lamar Jackson's also been turning the ball over at a high rate this year. So we'll see if Bill Belichick can kind of get that, you know, figured out there. And then the Colts going up against Tennessee. The Colts, one of their, you know, most solid defenses in the league. They kind of limit all positions to points. So I think that one's going to be a scrappy Thursday night football game. So that's pretty much it for the defense. Let's just take a look at some of the comments here for some questions. So we got a trade question here from Perlin Woods. Let me just take a look at this a little bit. So we're in a dynasty league, and you just got offered a trade to send James Conner to receive Ronald Jones and a second-round pick. So thoughts? My first thought is I'm interested in the second-round pick if it's like a top, you know, like 3 or 4 pick in that second round. Because I think I've already started to kind of look ahead to see, you know, who the first and second round players are, and just started to watch some of the film. But if you can get Ronald Jones and a second round pick, I'm curious about James Conner next year. He's probably a free agent going to a new team next year. So James Conner might have some life. I don't know if we're gonna. This really depends on. I guess are you in win now mode right now? Like, are you going to be competing for a playoff spot, or if you're a top 2 or 3 team? If so, I'm going to hold on to James Conner. But if you're looking to rebuild, I mean, Ronald Jones and a second-round pick, that might be interesting to me. So, yeah, I guess it depends on a few things. Is it going to be a high second-round pick? Are you rebuilding? Do you have enough, running back depth to win with Ronald Jones and the second-round pick? Kind of thoughts like that. But if anyone else, we had a few people hanging out here. If you guys have any more questions, let's see. I've been going for about 35 minutes. I can hang out another 5-10 minutes if you guys got questions or have any topics to talk about. We can definitely go over whatever you guys need. I have been working on my start-sit charts. Those are going to be starting to upload tonight. We do have the Tennessee Titans and the Colts game on Thursday night football. So tomorrow night is Wednesday. That's when I record my Thursday night show. So we'll be doing that. Same time, about 6 p.m. Central Time. So we'll be going over that and then answering any questions, just looking at some of the news there. So since we do have some time and we got no questions at the moment, I'm just going to pop over to Roto World and we'll kind of read some of the player blurbs and news. Just a really slow news day today, though. We didn't really get anything, I guess, positive here. So we got Jordan Love back, Odell Beckham, successful surgery. That's good to hear. Let's look around here. Tramon Williams signed to the Ravens. That's kind of cool. T.Y. Hilton, this is kind of an interesting one. He's practicing in full already, so he's probably going to play Thursday Night Football. If you needed somebody to start and you need help at receiver position here, I think T.Y. Hilton might be the guy to potentially take advantage of the Titans' defense. Let's just pull this up here. I'm curious about fantasy points allowed by the Titans. So, oh wow! So this is going to be a potential matchup that you want to take advantage of here. So I'm just using the website fftoday.com, and if you go to stats, you can actually click on fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. I've selected PPR, and we see that the Tennessee Titans have allowed the second most PPR points per game to the wide receiver position, just over 47 points per game here. So this is a lot. 10 touchdowns, over 1,600 yards, almost 150 catches. So that's going to be really good for guys like T.Y. Hilton. Maybe Zach Pascal can get in your lineup as a flex. If you're missing guys like Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, guys on bye, and you're looking for potential waiver wire moves. I mean, we just saw Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, Darnell Mooney. They just let the Bears receivers all have a nice day. Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Auden Tate all had double-digit days. The Pittsburgh Steelers receivers, Deontay Johnson, blew up for 80 and 2 touchdowns. Juju had 85 yards himself. So teams, multiple receivers are playing very well here. You see, look at this. Look at the Houston Texans here. Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, and Randall Cobb. All 3 Texans receivers over double digits here. So the Titans, a very leaky defense. I know T.Y. Hilton's been a little frustrating for owners this year, but if he's practicing in full, he's not going to get a better matchup than this the rest of the season. So I'm pretty interested in T.Y. Hilton here. So we just got another comment here from our guy, Perlin Woods. So current QB is Tom Brady, so do not really need a dynasty guy. Okay. So if we have current quarterback is Tom Brady, so do not really need a dynasty guy. I guess what's the rest of your team here? I'm just reading some of these notes here. So it's a lower second rounder, but I'm not really pushing for the playoffs this year. It's possible but doubtful. Also got offered a trade to send Kenny Golladay in a second for Deshaun Watson and a 4th. Wow. Okay. So you'd be sending Kenny Golladay and a second-round pick for Deshaun Watson and a 4th-round pick. I guess, are you a Deshaun Watson fan? I mean, he's a really good quarterback that you can build around of. I don't really know if I trust the Texans front office at the moment right now. I don't think they have a 1st or 2nd-round pick for like the next 2 years. So I'm a little nervous about Deshaun Watson as a Houston Texan. I think I might be okay with hanging on to Brady and just maybe drafting a guy or two this coming season. But I don't know. I don't think I'm liking the trade Kenny Golladay in a second. That's given up a lot of youth there for just one quarterback spot where I think I could hold on to Tom Brady and then potentially draft a quarterback next year. I think that interests me a little bit there. So I think I'm okay with, sending James Conner to receive Ronald Jones in a 2nd-round pick. If you want the extra 2nd-round pick, I think it's worth it to you. You could potentially, if you do that trade, you could end up getting 2 2nd-round picks in the draft, maybe you cash those in and then you move up in the first round. So if you're into that, I think I'm okay with more ammo. James Conner's a really injury-prone back. There's potential for him to leave Pittsburgh, and maybe that kind of changes, his destiny. I'm just curious how old James Conner is. And Ronald Jones is still pretty young. So James Conner is going to be entering age 26 next year. I'm a big Ronald Jones fan. I'm kind of not happy about the Leonard Fournette situation, but the dude's just 23 years old. He'll be 24 next August. I think I'm okay with doing the Ronald Jones and the second for your guy James Conner. Especially, if you're not really going anywhere and you want to, you could improve your draft position by doing this too. It's not really tanking. It looks a little bit better than tanking. But Ronald Jones, it's a good offense. You got Ronald Jones and Tom Brady as your team. Kind of roll with that. And I don't know, maybe with, if you get 2 second-round picks, that gives you a little bit more ammo. I love having the ability to make some decisions and maybe move up in the draft if I can. So I think I'm going to sign off on that one. That one's a pretty good deal for me. We're going on about 40 minutes here. Any other questions in the chat? Otherwise, I'm probably going to wrap this up in a minute or two. But again, we have a lot of injuries to monitor here. We didn't really get anything for news. So it's going to be I wish waiver wires would run on Wednesday nights instead of Tuesday nights, just because Wednesday we get all the practice reports, more information. There's just more going on. We got this huge list of, junk here. We don't really know what's going on, so it's a little bit disappointing. So yeah, you got Nick Chubb. Okay, yeah. So assuming you're going to be a top 5, if you don't make the playoffs, you're a top 5 or 6 pick. You're looking at a pretty good quarterback potentially there. You can get another running back or 2 in the second round. I wouldn't mind stacking a pick, getting Ronald Jones, and just kind of seeing what happens. And then, yeah, because you've been without Nick Chubb for the whole season, basically, you can send James Conner and just move Nick Chubb back up into that spot, because it sounds like Nick Chubb's playing. So I think I'm totally okay with moving on from James Conner, especially if you're not attached to him. I don't know if you're from Pittsburgh or anything crazy, but I don't know. I think Ronald Jones, he's still 23 years old. He's a good running back. I think we've seen that with Ronald Jones. Is maybe he's not the best hands, but from a pure running back standpoint, the dude, he rushed for 3 straight 100-yard games. I don't know what Bruce Arians doesn't like about him. He seems to be a pretty solid back to me. So I'm interested in collecting a young running back, getting a second-round pick, and I don't know, you can have a really fun draft next year. I haven't really looked too much at the potential second-round picks, but there should be, a handful of running backs and receivers that could be there in the second round for you. And then when you think about this last round of dynasty drafts, I collected a bunch of second-round picks. I took away guys like Zach Moss, Denzel Mims, Laviska Shenault. There's going to be a lot of players in that early part of the second round, or even the mid to late second round, that kind of fall to you. So the second round is one of my favorite rounds for dynasty drafts. So I think that's a good option for you, sir. But I don't know. If you guys have any questions, you guys can hit me up on the comments. Follow me on Twitter at @theFellowKGB. We do have a Facebook as well, Instagram. I don't really try to stay on top of those that much. I'm more of a Twitter and the YouTube. Those are the ones that I keep the most track of. But I want to thank you tonight for hanging out with me, giving me your time. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll be going live tomorrow evening at the same time, 6 p.m. Central Time. We'll go over the Thursday night football start sits. We'll talk a little bit of player news. We'll have a lot of injury reports and things to get to tomorrow night as well. So that's it for the Waiver Wire report. Thanks again for hanging out, and have a good night. We'll see you in another video. Peace.